Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. The night was silent, too silent for Gotham. It felt like the city was holding its breath, waiting for something to break the tension. High above the streets on the edge of a rooftop stood the Dark Knight, scanning the city with a familiar intensity. His cape billowed in the cold breeze, its edges sharp against the skyline. Batman could feel it in his bones. Something was coming. He had faced countless enemies in his time, but this night felt different. It wasn't just the cold creeping into his body. It was the sense of foreboding that lingered in the air. A sudden explosion rocked the streets below. Batman's gaze snapped to the source, where flames licked up from a building in the distance. The faint screech of tires echoed up as the scene erupted into chaos. Another night in Gotham, Batman thought, but this time he knew he'd have to push himself further than ever. He leaped from the rooftop without hesitation, descending to the magnet. As he landed in the thick of the action, Batman's gaze locked onto the hulking figure in the smoke. Bane, his towering frame was unmistakable, venom pumping through his veins, giving him monstrous strength. Bane's sound deep voice cut through the chaos. I told you, Batman, you cannot stop what's coming, he growled, throwing a car aside as if it weighed nothing. Gotham will break just like you. Batman clenched his jaw, tightening his grip on his grappling hook. The fight that followed was brutal. Bane was relentless, using his enhanced strength to pummel Batman again and again. Each hit felt like it was breaking something deep within him. But Batman didn't back down. He never did. Every punch he landed was precise, every movement calculated to bring the behemoth down. But it wasn't enough, not this time. A particularly devastating blow from Bane sent Batman crashing into the side of a building, the impact sending a shockwave through his body. The pain was blinding, but he forced himself to stand. He had to keep going for Gotham, for the city that needed him. But before he could steady himself, Bane was on him again. The ground trembled as the brute lifted Batman into the air, his voice filled with satisfaction. Do you see now, Dark Knight, you are only human. With one final bone-crushing slam, Bane sent Batman crashing into the pavement. The world around him blurred. The sound of sirens in the distance mixed with the fading echoes of the fight and then darkness. When Batman opened his eyes again, it wasn't through the familiar sight of Gotham skyline that greeted him. It was darkness, but a different kind. His body felt heavy, his mind clouded with pain. He tried to move, but his muscles refused to cooperate. Bruce, a voice called from somewhere nearby. It wasn't Alfred. It was lighter, quicker, filled with urgency. Bruce, it's Miss Barry. Can you hear me? The flash. Some voice cut through the haze, and slowly Batman's senses began to return. He was in the Batcave, laid out on a medical table, machines humming softly around him. But even as his body regained consciousness, the pain lingered, reminding him of how close he had come to the edge. Don't you try to move, Barry said, appearing in a blur of red beside him. You're still healing. Bane really did a number on you. Batman says instinct was to push past the pain, to get up and get back out there. Gotham didn't rest, so neither could he. But as he tried to sit up, a sharp wave of agony shot through his ribs, forcing him to slump back down with a groan. I told you, Barry said, his tone half concerned, half teasing. You're not invincible no matter how many gadgets you've got. Batman didn't respond. He didn't need to. He wasn't used to being the one lying down, the one being taken care of. It felt wrong. Flash hovered around, nervous energy radiating off him as he paced the Batcave. Alfred said I was going to get supplies, but he said it'll take time for you to fully recover. So I guess it's just you and me for a while. Barry tried to sound casual, but Batman could sense the worry beneath the word. Time stretched in the Batcave with Barry refusing to leave Batman's side. Flash wasn't one for sitting still, but he couldn't bring himself to abandon Bruce, not when he was like this. Days passed, and Batman remained in a deep, restless sleep. Each time Barry checked in on him, the sight of the bruises on Bruce's body, the bandages, the slow beeping of the heart monitor, it all chipped away at the image of the indestructible Batman that everyone, including Barry, held in their minds. Barry had fought alongside Bruce for years, had seen him take on gods and monsters, always coming out on top. But here he was, mortal fragile, and Barry didn't know how to handle it. While Bruce slept, Barry explored the Batcave. It was enormous, more than he had ever realized from the few times he had been there on mission. The cavern was filled with relics of Batman, sent past trophies from battles long won. and scars from battles lost. As Barry wandered through the shadows, he stumbled upon something he wasn't supposed to find, an old journal tucked away behind a display case. He hesitated, glancing back toward Bruce's unconscious form, before curiosity got the better of him. The journal was filled with Bruce's meticulous handwriting, entries chronicling his thoughts, fears, and doubt. Barry skimmed through, surprised by what he found. Beneath the cold, calculating exterior, Bruce was constantly haunted by the weight of his choices. Every death, every failure, it was all here in these pages. Batman wasn't just a symbol of justice. He was a man burdened by guilt and responsibility. The more Barry read, the heavier his heart became. He had always looked up to Bruce, admired his strength and determination. But now he saw the man behind the mask, the broken man, the one who bore the weight of an entire city on his shoulders, with no one to lean on. It was the third night after Bruce had been injured when he finally stirred. Barry, sitting in the chair beside him, jolted awake at the sound of movement. He was at Bruce outside in an instant, watching as the dark night slowly opened his eyes, blinking against the dim light of the cave. "Bruce," Barry said softly, relief flooding through him. "You ran away." Bruce groaned, his body stiff and unresponsive. Every inch of him felt like it had been put through a grinder, but he forced himself to focus. He had to get up. There was too much to do. "Some street try to move," Barry said, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You were not fully healed yet, Bane? He really did a number on you?" Bruce's jaw tightened at the mention of Bane. He remembered the fight vividly, the way the hulking brute had overpowered him, the way he had been thrown around like a rag doll. The shame of it burned in his chest, but there was no time to dwell on it. Gotham needed him. "I have to get back out there," Bruce rasped, trying to sit up. Barry shook his head. "You can try on that yet. You need time to heal." "I don't have time," Bruce growled, his voice strained with pain. He pushed against Barry's but his strength failed him. He fell back against the bed, his breath coming in ragged gasps. Barry watched him for a moment, torn between admiration and frustration. "Bruce," he said quietly, "you and I always have to do this alone. You've got the lead. You've got me." Bruce's gaze flickered to Barry, the intensity in his eyes fading for just a moment. But then, as quickly as it had appeared, the vulnerability vanished, replaced by the familiar cold mask of Batman. "I've always been alone," Bruce said, his voice flat. "It's the only way I know how to do this." Barry looked at Bruce, his heart heavy with the weight of what he had read and the reality of seeing the mighty Batman so broken. He wanted to argue, to convince Bruce that he wasn't alone, but he knew better than to push too hard. Instead, he offered a softer approach. "You don't have to do everything tonight, Bruce. Let me handle Gotham for a while. You've got to heal. Bane hit you hard." Barry's voice was calm but firm. He needed Bruce to understand that he wasn't asking for permission. He was telling him how it was going to be. Bruce, the silence spoke volumes. The tension between them was palpable. But in that silence, Barry caught a glimpse of something deeper, something Bruce was unwilling to say. For a moment, Barry considered saying more, maybe something to lighten the mood, but he knew Bruce wouldn't appreciate it. Instead, he placed his hand gently on Bruce's shoulder, letting the gesture convey what words couldn't. "I'll be out there," Barry said quietly, "but I'll be back." With that, he sped out of the Batcave, a red blur vanishing into the night. The streets of Gotham were always buzzing with some form of chaos. Tonight it seemed quieter, but Barry knew better than to trust the calm. He moved through the city at superhuman speed, checking in on the usual trouble spot. The criminals of Gotham, always lurking in the shadows, knew that Batman was out of commission. Word spread quickly in the underworld, but they hadn't counted on the Flash stepping in. Barry handled them with ease, disarming thugs and stopping heists before they even started. But as the night wore on, his mind kept drifting back to Bruce. He couldn't shake the image of Batman lying broken on that table, nor the pages of the journal that revealed a man far more fragile than he'd ever imagined. Back at the Batcave, Bruce was restless. His body ached with every breath, but it wasn't just the physical pain that gnawed at him. It was the vulnerability. Barry had seen too much, learned too much. Bruce had spent years cultivating an aura of invincibility, and now with just a few days of unconsciousness, that facade had started to crumble. Barry's words echoed in his mind. "You don't have to do this alone." It wasn't that simple, though. It never had been. Bruce's whole life had been defined by solitude, by the need to carry the burden of Gotham on his own shoulders. He didn't know any other way, but as much as he wanted to deny it, there was a kernel of truth in Barry's words that gnawed at him. Maybe it wasn't his weakness to let someone else share the load. Barry returned to Wayne Manor, his usual energy subdued by the long night of patrolling. Alfred met him at the entrance, looking more worn than usual, though he greeted Barry with his usual formal nod. "Master Barry," Alfred said, "thank you for keeping an eye on things. Master Bruce is awake, but I fear his stubbornness is stronger than his injury." Barry offered a tired smile. "That sounds about right. Mind if I check in on him?" Alfred waved him in. "By all means. He could use the company, though. He'll never admit it." Barry made his way back to the Batcave. Bruce was sitting up now, his face pale but alert, his gaze scanning the monitors that lined the cave. He didn't tell a look at Barry when he entered. "You were out there last night," Bruce said, his voice rough from disuse. Barry shrugged. "Gotham needed someone. I figured you could use the rest." Bruce's eyes flickered toward him, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. But the gratitude was buried beneath layers of stoicism, as it always was with Bruce. Barry didn't need to mind. He understood Bruce better now, and he need words to feel the connection they share. "I am not going to be down for long," Bruce said after a long pause. "Bane one tea. Wait for me to recover." "Bane says, not the only one I am worried about," Barry replied. "You've imaginees who would love to see Gotham fall apart, especially with Batman out of the picture, but I've got it under control." Bruce said nothing. The silence stretched, thick with the weight of unspoken thought. Barry could feel Bruce's tension, the internal battle he was fighting between his need to be out there and his inability to accept help. "I know what you were thinking," Barry said, breaking the silence. "You think you can handle it all, that you have to, but even Batman needs someone watching his back." Bruce's jaw clenched, the muscles in his neck tightening. Barry could see he was struggling to keep his composure. Finally, Bruce spoke, his voice low and rough. "I can afford to be weak, Barry. Not now, not ever." "You ray not weak," Barry said, meeting Bruce's intense gaze. "You re human there, says a different." Bruce exhaled slowly, the tension in his shoulders loosening ever so slightly. But he didn't say anything. Barry took that as a small victory. The days passed in a blur of red and black. Barry continued to patrol Gotham, taking down criminals with his usual efficiency, while Bruce remained in the Batcave recovering. Barry visited regularly, their conversations growing more frequent, more personal. Bruce never fully opened up, but he didn't need to. Barry could see the cracks, the vulnerability just beneath the surface. One night, after a particularly quiet patrol, Barry returned to the Batcave expecting to find Bruce in his usual spot, staring at the monitor. But this time Bruce wasn't true there. Instead, he found Bruce standing in front of the display case where the journal had been. "Did you read it?" Bruce asked, his back to Barry. Barry hesitated. "Yeah, I did." Bruce didn't turn around. His voice was steady, but Barry could hear the strain in it. "Then you know why I do this, why I can't stop. I know you've been carrying a lot, Bruce, more than anyone should have to, but you read not alone." For a long moment, there was only silence. Then Bruce finally turned to face him, his expression unreadable. "It's not about being alone," he said quietly. "It's not about responsibility. Every life in Gotham is my responsibility. I can let that go." Barry nodded, understanding now more than ever. But he also knew that Bruce couldn't carry that weight forever. "You don't have to let it go," Barry said, "but you don't have to carry it all by yourself, either." Bruce didn't respond, but Barry could see something shift in his eyes, just a flicker, a hint of acknowledgement. That night, Gotham fell into chaos again. A new threat emerged, one that couldn't be ignored. A villain, emboldened by the rumors of Batman's incapacitation, took the city hostage. Explosions rocked the streets, fires burned out of control, and Gotham was on the brink of collapse. Barry didn't hesitate. He suited up and raced into the heart of the city, his mind focused on the task at hand. But even as he sped through the chaos, his thoughts kept returning to Bruce. He knew Bruce would want to be out here, fighting alongside him, but Barry also knew that Bruce wasn't ready. As the night war on the battle intensified, Barry found himself overwhelmed, the sheer scale of the destruction pushing him to his limit. He could feel his energy draining, the weight of Gotham's fate pressing down on him. But just when he thought he might collapse, a familiar figure appeared beside him. It was Bruce, weak, injured, but determined. Batman had returned. Together, they fought through the night side by side. Bruce's presence was a reminder of the strength they shared, the bond that had been forged in the darkness. And as they stood together, watching the city slowly return to order, Barry knew that something had changed. Bruce had let him in, if only a little. When the battle was over and the fires had been extinguished, Bruce turned to Barry, his expression softened by exhaustion. "Thank you," Bruce said quietly, the words heavy with meaning. Barry smiled, feeling the weight of the night lift from his shoulders anytime. They stood together in silence, watching the first light of dawn break over Gotham. In that moment, Barry realized that while Gotham might always need Batman, Batman didn't always have to stand alone.